Okay, in the last few tutorials, you have learned how to animate in a very basic way using tweening techniques. Okay, so for example, you will have used keyframes to change the position and the scale. There are other things that you could obviously do, but you've changed the effect. You've animated the directional blur effect, and you found that there. What I want to do now is just a very quick activity where I show you how tweening can be used in a real world situation. So a very simple way in which we can do that is to look at a simple way of applying these exact same tools in a simple title. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is make a new composition at this point in time. Make a new composition, just press OK with any of these. We don't need to change any of them at this point in time. Your composition actually sits there now. It still lives. You can actually see it in the project. It's composition 1. You're going to make composition 2 now. So what I want you to do is to find the text tool, grab the text tool and bring it in. Okay. The text tool can essentially be changed and everything like that before you even do anything else. So I can pick a certain font. I'm just going to grab that one for now. I've changed the size of the font, and there are lots of options that I can essentially do. But at some point in time, I need to actually type. So I'm just going to type my name. Now, it doesn't necessarily fit onto the screen very well, so you need to perhaps move it if you've got a long name like myself, or change the size of it. Okay? So you have the option there. Notice where the anchor point is. It's essentially there at this point in time. You can move that if you'd like to. Okay, but essentially that's that. What you can do, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all use these basic tools to make something that actually looks quite nice. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to bring the writing in, so it goes whoosh, in. And then stay still, and we're going to add the directional blur just to give it a little bit of flair as well. So just like with the shape layer, you can go into the options using the triangle. You've got the text option there, but the transform option. We're just using the transform options for now, and let's change the position. You can click the stopwatch at this point in time and change the position to its starting position. Okay, you've already got a keyframe at this point, and you're directly affecting that keyframe. So we make sure it comes all the way off screen. Then we're going to move the marker along to the point where we want it to come on screen. So we actually want it to come on screen fairly quickly. So what is that? About 9 frames at that point in time. Let's round that off to 10 frames. So within 10 frames, we're saying it's going to come into the middle there. Okay. Notice the distance between each frame as well. It's moving that much in each frame. Okay. So after that point in time, what do we need to add? We need to add the effect. Let's have a quick look at that and play it back. That's fairly quick, okay? And that's perfectly fine. Let's add a bit of flair to this at this point in time and change the blurring. Okay, so you can drag that, drop that onto there, or drop that onto there, and change it up. So first of all, I want to change the direction. Because it's moving in a horizontal trajectory, I'm going to move the direction so that it is in that trajectory as well. Okay. Now, for your effects, like last time, you can actually find your effects down here so that you can play around with them in relation to the keyframes you've got, and you can also zoom in. Okay. So at this point in time, let's animate the blur length. So let's bring it up first of all. So we want it nice and quick. Okay. So it comes in. Okay, it comes in like that. But we want it to stop at the right point in time. So right before it stops, I'm going to add a keyframe. Click on the stopwatch to add that keyframe. Okay? From there to there, at this point in time, because there's no keyframe before it, that will always be like that. Okay? Once it stops, you want the blur length to be brought right down. So you can click and drag that all the way down. So what that will do is have blur up to the point where it stops. Okay, so let's just play that back now. Let's zoom out, just so that we can grab the whole thing and we can put it on repeat. See if we're happy with that. That's pretty cool. What you've done there is used the animation techniques that we've looked at in a real world setting. Okay, you'll find this effect being used in Nowenda videos. Okay, and it just adds a little bit of flair. Instead of just having the writing there, you've gone a little bit further. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. All right. Other things that you can do, if we were to go further, is to think about animation options. So for example, if I was to click here, animate, I have lots of other options here. I'll show you one other way whilst I have you. Okay, so let's play around with the opacity. Now it's called opacity, but really it's making it look like things are typed on screen. And I'll show you how we go about doing that. So the next thing I would want you to do is do that. Okay, so if you can, take a screenshot of what you've been able to do just so that you can look at it in your journal, and then we'll move on to this one. Okay then, so I'm going to get rid of my directional blur effect, and I'm going to get rid of any of these keyframes as well, okay, so that the position is always in the middle. All right, now let's start playing around with the animator. So you have at this point in time clicked animate and you've gone to opacity. Okay, now let's have an exploration as to what these are at this point in time. What you have here is other options that you can click the stopwatches on and everything like that. This one's very important. The opacity is at 100, sorry. And there are other things that you can do as well, but we're not going to touch any of these advanced tools because we don't necessarily need to. But let's play around with what we've got here. Okay. Now, if I am at 100% the end, that means that you can see the text entirely. If I was to bring this all the way down to the end, you would not be able to see the text, but you need to make sure that the opacity is down to 0. Ah, okay, all right, okay. So now that the opacity is down to 0, we can actually see what we're doing, okay? So what you need to do is play around with the start and end until it's working to how you want. So I've got all backwards with this, so let's try and work this out. So if I want this all to type out, I need to do it like that. So the start needs to be at 100% and the end needs to be at 0%. Just have a play around with that until you're at that stage. Your opacity is at 0, and you should be able to make the letters appear on screen one after the other. Okay, so let's try animating that now. So you've got a number of frames, try to type out your name. So I'm going to click the end here. I'm going to move along to here. I'm going to add those frames in. And then I'm going to play that back and see what that's like. Okay, that's too fast, but that's only because I am zoomed all the way in. I'm going to bring that all the way out as well. Okay, so that's another animation technique. Still using keyframes. You've got an animator directly in your text area. There's loads and loads of things that you can do essentially to you know, apply different animations and stuff like that. So we've looked at effects. You at this point in time can still play around with effects, but the next activity, what you're actually going to be doing is making some title sequences. So it will be good if you can experiment for a little while and also take some screenshot evidence as well for your work as well. Okay, thank you very much.